Hey, good evening, Galleon. This is Tom O'Leary here tonight. Excited to be here to talk about things that are on your mind about the city of Galleon. Matt and I were chatting about some of the things that are going on in the city, and that made us a few moments late. So, um, welcome. And what I would like to talk a little bit about are some things that are on the council agenda tomorrow night. And then we'll get into questions and see what's on people here in Gallion's mind. Um, if if you were to look at, or let me share with you a little bit of the agenda, one of the items that's on the agenda that's probably the largest ticket item is the purchase of a new bucket truck for the line department. I want to say a couple of things about that. This was in the 2020 budget, and some of you may remember early in the COVID crisis, we decided to cancel any equipment purchases, limit that, and try to, kind of bring in our wings, if you will, reduce our exposure. And so this project, or this truck, is something that was in last year's budget. I think there's broad or strong consensus. I suspect tomorrow night the authorization to purchase a new truck for the line department through state purchasing will have strong support. I expect that to be voted out and authorize that purchase to happen. It's important to note that this kind of purchase, and for most people, they're not aware of this. A little bit like a fire truck, in the sense that it takes a while to custom is probably not the best word, but I'll use that. Build this truck. So. Based on approval by council, the person who represents the state bid lowest price for this kind of truck will come up to Galleon, and our superintendent and this salesperson will, if you will, outfit or specify, put together the specs for this truck. That truck is what council will be voting on tomorrow night. So we'll get that piece of equipment specified, and then get it ordered, go through the internal process. However, it's going to be early next year. We're expecting about a year, not delay. You hear me? I started to say delay. It's not a delay. That's just the lead time in getting this kind of truck delivered. So, from my way of thinking, that's a pretty important part of what council's going to do tomorrow night, and it's something that, from the point of view of if you will say, the line department, or people who know how important having good equipment is to run the city, this is something that delaying it a year, it's certainly hasn't caused us any problems as of yet, but it's definitely a situation where getting that new piece of equipment in is a real important step forward. So that's tomorrow night. As far as from the mayor's point of view, that's perhaps or certainly one of the most important parts of legislation tomorrow night. Any questions?
Not yet.
All right, I'm going to dive into freeze fund issues. Although there's nothing really on the agenda tomorrow night that relates to the freeze fund or any projects related to that. I want to ask people to take a look at Wednesday night. Make some time in and around 7 o'clock for the Parks Committee meeting, because at that committee meeting we'll be talking about 2021 freeze projects. So I think everyone who uses the parks, it's It's an important first meeting, initial meeting, and so we'll talk to council about what we would expect as being some of the most important projects. Without getting into a lot of detail, just to ask you to watch it Wednesday night at 7 if you have the time. We pushed back, furloughed 2 or 3 projects from our list of projects last year and did not draw down the funds for those projects, and so they still sit there in the bullpen, if you might say. So Wednesday's discussion will be about that. Which one of those 2020 projects we want to put on the top of the list for 2021, and really, has anything come up in the last 8-9 months that will compete with or should move ahead in council's mind or in the city administration's mind. So that's going to go forward. The kinds of things that Matt and I are looking at, or other people in the mayor's office, are ways in which we can take the first phase of the bike path, walking path, and add a part 2 and use some freeze funds for that. And then we're also looking at applying for 2 or 3 state, or mostly state, grant funds that would perhaps add to that. So one of the things that we're looking at is taking a good start, which we think the bike path, walking path is, as we started it, and add legs to it. So we'll be talking with the school, I think, a couple weeks from now about how or whether they want us to move up north, across Bucyrus Road and on up Hesby Drive, and how they want us to at least initially visualize and talk about going around the school property, and then I think ultimately, if you will, whatever ultimately means, but over the next several years, I think our goal would be to get to Pico Park on the north end, and then figure out what's the best way to go south towards Amon. So without getting into a whole much detail about that whole subject of the bike paths, I would certainly forecast, if you will, some of the city's request for freeze funds to go to that project. And there are 2 or 3 other, as I said a minute ago, bullpen projects that we'll talk about on Wednesday night. So anyways, I'll stop there. I'm going to try to do as many questions as we have, and I get the high sign. There's a question, so let's do it.
Yeah, first I wanted to mention Dawn had a question on the bike path. She asked, how many phases do you think the path will be?
Yeah, that's a neat question. I think that the next discussion is whether we go west from the bike path where it terminates now, towards Biddle Road, and then back up north to Winchester, if that's phase 2, Dawn, or the discussion in a couple of weeks with the school really gets to how do we go up Hesby Drive and then work our way around the school property to access what I would call the Tid Drive neighborhood off of Arlington, and then also that property that accesses in up on the north part of the school property. I think Downing Place, Cheshire subdivision, if you will. So I think that'll be the next, and so whether or not we do those at the same time, to get back to answer the question, I would expect that we would go west and then back up north along Biddle, and then work with the school to come up with a plan to get north maybe in 2022. We'll see. And then the next step would probably be in 2023, which would go, if you will, behind the car wash, behind the Bell Store, the Dairy Queen, Dr. Huggins property, and on up to Pico Park. So I think there's 4 phases as it relates to a Galleon City project. So that's my best answer, and it doesn't mean it's the way it'll end up happening, but I would say 4 phases, and anyone's guess about when that happens or whether that connects to a broader countywide bike trail, walking trail. Right,
Okay.
that's what I got.
Thanks, Mayor. Next question tonight came from Tim. He
Yeah.
asked, who is administering the COVID vaccine to the homebound and elderly?
That's a great question. I have no idea. So, swing and a miss. I mean, I think I'm, in a baseball sense, I think I'm taking that. It's a great question. I have no idea. It's a strike. So if anyone's keeping score. My best answer as to how you would address that, if you're in the city, I would suggest you contact the health department. And if you're outside the city but a Galleon area person, I would say contact the county health department. Yeah, I don't know, but I'm not sure how old Tim is. But if you're not as old as me, it's going to be a little while. And I think that I don't know much beyond that. I think that those of us that are a little bit younger, anyone under 70 is going to wait. But the other cop-out I'll offer is that we'll track that information down. Matt will post that up on our website about who is eligible, where do you get it now if you're in Crawford County, where do you get it now if you're in the city of Galleon. So rather than tagging the health department and saying they're it, we'll try to work to combine that answer and try to get something up on our website. Wow, I hate when the second question is like a stump the band, but let's go on if there are more things.
Sure, we do have a couple more right now. And if anybody else has questions to add, go ahead and submit them in the comments, please. Next question came from Holly. What about a possible turn lane added at the stoplight by the hotel? Traffic is held up a lot waiting to turn left.
Oh yeah, let me think here. If you are a Brant Road user and you want to turn left to get to 30, that's the movement that Holly's talking about. A lot of efforts being put in. I started to say help's on the way. I don't know for sure, but there is the city is paying for a set of plans to add that left-hand turn lane to what I would describe as the eastbound movement. Okay, if what she's talking about is, no, I want to point west, I want to turn left and go south, there's real tight geometry. There's not a lot of property in the public right-of-way right there on what we describe as East Brant Road. So there's no real plan in the short term for that movement. There is a plan that not everyone listening, those people wanting to turn right to get towards 30, heading east. There's been a large pothole. Everyone wants to sneak by, and we're going to try to provide for that so that there is a hard surface and it doesn't become a problem when you want to scoot by to the right to get north. That would be heading west. Let's say you're coming from Brant or Fairview. All of you folks, that movement, and if that's what Holly's talking about, a left-hand turn there to the south, that's not in any of the plans. the other one that I described briefly, the left-hand turn heading east going north there off of kind of the Biddle and Brant part of the Galleon area. We're working real hard right now to get that funded, get it designed and get it funded. And our hope is that left-hand turn lane there would help in the redevelopment of the Pico property, something that I'm tempted to talk a lot about, but I'll stay focused on the question, and get a left-hand turn lane there. So nothing much if you're talking about heading west and turning left at Branton and 598. I hope and think helps on the way if what you're talking about is turning north, coming from the Biddle Brant Road area. So, classic, Matt. That's a classic. Tom O'Leary over answers the question, but I hope that helps out Holly. And if she's got any follow up, send it my way or our way.
It actually, Holly just sent in a clarification. She was talking about when you're on 598 and trying to turn left onto Brant.
Yeah, that's part of the project. Thanks, Holly. That's part of the big project that we fully expect to be sold by ODOT, managed by ODOT, a lot of Galleon money in it though, and a lot of state. It's a pretty cool example of a state-federal partnership with local money to get a, I mean, it's as obvious as the nose on one's face that we need to make improvements there. So yeah, Holly, your question, will there be a left-hand turn lane when we're done? Yes. And however, the bad news is it'll be probably early in 2022. You know, with me, early May, might be June or July, but we'll see. But yeah, that is, to simplify, that is part of the what I call the big project, sold in July of this year and start construction this fall and finished up next year. It'll have a left-hand turn lane. Everything I said about the left-hand turn lane coming out of that industrial area there is also true. So we're working real hard to get the design and obviously the funding, but get that put in so that the redevelopment of the Pico property I can stop talking about it and we can start seeing it happen. So want to get me grouchy, let's start talking about Pico 2 and why and that old power equipment property and why it's taken so long to get it redeveloped. But my coaches are telling me, stay positive, don't be grouchy. All right, anyways, I'm just trying to have fun, folks.
Okay.
Next.
Yep, next question tonight came from Samantha. She asked for an update on a dog park at Kobe. And I do want to point out the Parks and Recreation Committee Chair, Aaron Ivey, did comment that topic will be discussed at the Parks and Recreation meeting.
Yes, and yes. And Sam, thank you for getting back in touch. I thought you'd, fallen off the face of the earth. Real, I'm not joking around. This is somebody who puts a lot of time in a handful of issues in the community. I don't know, is she still helping with Talk About Galleon?
She has a page called Galleon Neighborhood Watch.
All right, there you go. That is another one that here's a cheap commercial. That's what is that? Shameless plug. It's like that's one of the websites, if you will, or group sites that we keep an eye on. So, anyways, enough bouquets at Sam. She'll get a big head, and we won't be able to deal with her. But thanks for calling in. And Aaron is right. We're going to talk about that. Whether that turns out to be a freeze project or not, time will tell. But that's the kind of project that you could expect our office to introduce as things that we might want to try to tackle in 2021. So, all right, what else we got?
Okay, last question I have as of right now came from Dawn. She asked for an update on a grocery store.
It is slow moving, but I'll just keep repeating what I've said. There is actually read the real estate transactions today. I rarely do that, but hopeful that the property that the Save-A-Lot's located on will change ownership, and the acquiring entity wants to put hundreds of thousands of dollars into it. Think the wise guys in the audience might say, yeah, that's what it will take. Yeah, I don't think the investor has his eyes wide open, if you will. And so I think that's our best chance at this point, Don, that the reinvestment in the Save-A-Lot property and the modernization of that property is the most likely next grocery store opportunity. And I don't know a whole lot more than that. I'm not going to build false hope that something will happen in Galleon West, but you do scratch your head and wonder, it's like, well, what are the obstacles to making that happen? And I'll tell you, I'm kind of frustrated by it. So, first message, I think there's going to be an investment once the real estate transfers out there at Neisner's, Palmyra, however you remember it, Kroger's, Save-A-Lot, however you remember it, and that is, when that transaction happens, that will open the door for a major renovation, reinvestment in that property. I guess if Tom Brady can say sucks, so can Tom O'Leary. The location sucks from the point of view of the less mobile people in the community. No denying. But that's the best ray of hope. I think the pressure on the city, the pressure on people who provide public transportation in the community is to come up with a way that people who have to walk a long ways to get to a reinvented, if you will, reinvested a Save-A-Lot, that we work on how you get there as a pedestrian, and then probably more important, how you get there as somebody who's trying to get across town, and needs some transportation help. So, anyways, very last thing I would say about that, I'm not sure if we have any more questions, and I don't need to keep on going just to keep on going, but we're inching along, as I've said several times before on these Monday night conversations, inching along towards acquiring a property instead of vaguely referring, I think it's 520 or something like that, Harding Way East. And that's moving ahead. And what we're going to do is piece together some land. Our hope is to piece together some land bank money, some city money, in exchange for getting the current property owner to sign over that property. So I only mention that because maybe there's 20 of us that are big believers in providing a grocery store operation that can serve the people, in the uptown area and the east end of town. And so without getting the east side, west side, then if the best I can do to answer Don's question is, out there on Portland Way North, we'll have a remodeled grocery store. That's not very responsive. I don't feel like that answers the question about a grocery store generally for Galleon. So we're going to push ahead, whether that property just east of the tracks redevelops as a grocery store or as some other kind of commercial operation. I think it's a great redevelopment opportunity, and so I'm happy to keep pushing at that. And I think we're going to be close this year in acquiring that, demoing that building which the roof is collapsing, and get that site clear and begin to think about what it can be redeveloped as. I think it should be a grocery store, but how's that for a classic over answering of the question? So something going on Portland Way North, but I don't think that satisfies all of the needs. So
Okay.
what else we got?
Thanks, Mayor. I also have a question from Tom.
Yeah.
Why isn't the parking ban on posted streets enforced during the 3-inch and larger snow events?
Great question, or good question. I wish Chief Satterfield was here. I'm sure it's required for all the superintendents to listen in on Monday nights. The short answer, Tom, is all hell breaks loose when you go to tow the first car. So, I think the big issue and what would be helpful is if there's a particular area that Tom's concerned about. But why isn't it? Because the areas that motorists find most disturbing or offensive, if you will, is that that's their garage. And there's no place to park it. And so there may be exceptions to that. But that's really, I guess that's the short answer, the candid answer, is that where are these people going to move their vehicle? And so what we've found when we have enforced it, give you a couple quick examples, and we'll see if there's a follow-up. On Grove Avenue, between Boston and Orange Street, we tried to get some of the chronic, I'm not even sure if the cars are working anymore, tried to move those a couple of years ago, and all heck broke loose. And so that's probably the honest answer. I hope Tom's got a follow-up, but we don't enforce it because it becomes a situation that doesn't resolve the parking, only resolves and people having their cars towed. I honestly think people who get snowed in, this may be a little more controversial, people get snowed in, like the snow plow plows them in. The ones that are going to work shovel themselves out and get out of there. What you find is that those vehicles, if you really spent some time on it, and we have, is that those vehicles probably don't move much between now and spring. And then maybe they're towed off. So, I don't know. That's a really pretty lame answer, but unless you want us to call rocks and have these things towed off and junked, that's probably what we're looking at. I'd rather let the property owner, but sell that car for a few $100s rather than us tow it and sell it for a few $100s. Let me think what else. I don't want to say anything more. My guess is that the person that asked that question has a garage, but I don't know that. From my point of view, well, there are a lot of people who rent or own property that don't have a garage. So I'm not quite sure where we're supposed to go. Now, if I had a crusade to get on, I'd get rid of that snow ban. But that'll really stir things up. I think it's useless, doesn't solve anything, and it makes it look like we're not enforcing the law. We aren't. So go ahead. What else we got?
It's Tom did have a follow-up. He said years ago on residential streets, one side parking, they would be asked to park on the opposite side for one night so the snow could be cleared.
That's a great suggestion. That's a really good suggestion. And what I call the wood streets, that has been a real issue with on-street parking. That's a really good idea. So I don't mean to be a sarcastic jerk. That's a good follow-up question. We should resurrect that. Unless it came up during the city manager era and it was like obviously a dumb idea. But no, that's alternating that so that you can get the curbs, get it from curb to curb. It's a good idea. I appreciate that, Tom. Honest. Thank you.
Okay, last question I had for tonight came from Tina. Is the street crew going to get the snow cleared out along main streets? Some crosswalks you cannot get a wheelchair through.
Yeah, it is an ongoing issue, Tina, and I think it goes back to Tom's question. If where we're talking, I think, is uptown, that's what you're listen to me, referring to? That's where Tom's suggestion is really valuable. If we could get who parks up there all night in the uptown area are people who live there, and that's kind of how we are in Galion. We're oh, that sounds real Chamber of Commerce-y. That'll get me in trouble, but we're fortunate to have the occupancy in the uptown area that Galion has. Not diverting totally off that question. Galion has a lot more people residing in the uptown area than most of us think about, at least those of us that don't live in the uptown area. But and with that comes that same challenge. Like those folks who live there don't have really any other place to park during that snow emergency. That's why the previous suggestion is a good one. Is that we could it's my favorite part of doing this on Monday night. That's a neat suggestion. I wish I had thought of it. We could alternate that parking so that you could do a clean sweep, a clean removal of all that excess snow. For sure, we just let it, how do we get rid of all those big piles of snow? We just wait for April, and that'll start to happen. So if we could talk a little bit about that and perhaps pass legislation that would, put the residents on one side of the street or another so that you could make that clean sweep. So, and I know it's a goofy thing, but that makes me smile and is exciting about doing this on Monday. Like I said, on these shows, is you do get some good suggestions. So, anyways, is that what we have there, Matt?
Yeah, those were all the questions for
Okay.
tonight.
For those people, maybe there's no one at this point, who are hoping that I'll address this issue about the Freeze Center, good, bad, or indifferent. I think make sure you fill out your survey about that when you get it, and we'll probably see how that discussion unfolds over the next couple of weeks. There have been close to 500 responses already over the internet, and a lot of discussion about the survey itself. I happen to think it was a really cool idea by council to solicit opinions about the Freeze Center, and I continue to look forward to those responses getting out in the community. The 500, just shy of 500 current responses don't represent anyone who would rely on getting their utility bill to see their survey in there. So whether it's good, bad, or indifferent, the utility bills haven't hit yet, as far as I understand. So I expect a lot of people to see that in their utility bill and respond to what I think is for 5 or 6 questions, and from somebody who likes soliciting information. I think it was a pretty good job. I think one could pay thousands of dollars to have a consultant develop a survey if they wanted to. But this is, this is proposed by council. It's pretty simple, but I think it will get us the information, us as the community, the information about what questions need to be answered, what questions or doubts there are about the Freeze Center, and it'll give us a pathway to move forward to whether you are a doubter or negative or enthusiastic proponent. I think the survey will provide a lot of information, help council a lot, and I'm a huge advocate of them meaning the council members stepping forward to solicit that information. So, all right, that's like a guy in the that won't go home. I was going to use a tavern example. I won't, but like I'm here to pick a fight. So I brought that up. I mean that, but I am surprised that there weren't any or more questions about the Freeze Center. So, all right, everybody's got their mind made up about that. All right, when you get your utility bill over the next week or so, maybe I'll come back and menace you on a Monday night and kind of go through that survey and answer some questions that may be out there about that project, that use of the Freeze Foundation, and how that relates to Gallion's future development. So with that, I'll sit up and thank you for listening, the questions we had, and it's a pleasure to do these on Monday night, and we'll see you next week. Good night.